Hello everyone, welcome to the 6th video in the Pete McKee Art History series. If you're new to this channel, then thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share if you enjoyed this video. I'm Ellen, the curator at the McKee Gallery, and today we'll be looking at one of Pete McKee's works of art and we'll discuss its influences. If you're not familiar with who Pete McKee is, then please check out the beginning of our first video, which gives insight into how Pete became an artist and the style he is known for. A link to this video can be found below. In today's video, we will examine Pete McKee's 2016 painting, Beach Coma. In this work, a family relaxes on a beach, almost empty apart from the small group of people that can be spotted in the distance. The vast expanse of blue sky without a single cloud evokes feelings of calm, a sentiment reflected by the family who takes centre stage in this image. The father figure bonds with his son, pointing out something on the horizon which the young boy looks out for, perhaps taking a rest after a game of cricket. The mother and daughter also relax into this moment of tranquility. The girl snuggles herself up in a towel after emerging from the sea. A small bucket of water to her right awaits her feet. Soon her mother will help wash off the sand before she puts on her sandals. But in this exact moment, both enjoy the simple interaction of the mother combing her daughter's hair. Although this exchange is nothing out of the ordinary, Pete specifically focuses on this moment, referring to it in the title of the work. When reflecting on this piece, Pete stated that the motivation behind the painting was to express the moments of tranquility felt when on holiday with your family. I wanted to create an image that immediately conveyed these feelings, capturing a split-second instant that reflects the peace and quiet that can be experienced when relaxing on a beach. The world seems to slow down, and all that can be heard are the distant squawks of gulls and the gentle lapping of the waves. The drudgery and stress of life evaporates, allowing you to connect with one another. I chose to focus on the mum combing her daughter's hair, as there is something so nurturing about this standard task. As discussed in previous videos, much of Pete's work draws on his experiences growing up. As a young boy, his family would often go on holiday to seaside destinations, staying in a caravan and spending time on the beach. In Beach Coma, the sparseness of the scene is a deliberate choice, as the artist uses the vast landscape as a metaphor for the peace felt when on holiday with your loved ones. This sparseness also allows the nature in this landscape painting to take centre stage. Within this work, Pete comments on people's relationship with nature, especially that of those within the community where he grew up. A lot of working class people I knew growing up, including my father, worked in factories. The chance to get away and to spend time in nature was a welcome break from the back-breaking, noisy, dirty work that many people spent large parts of their lives immersed in. The work that inspired Beach Coma is Beach Scene, painted by Edgar Degas in the second half of the 19th century. The scene centres on a young girl lying under a parasol whilst a maid combs her hair. Various objects are strewn nearby: a bonnet, a swimming costume, a second parasol and a bag. We can immediately see the influence Pete has taken from this painting. He has recreated the intimate act of a nurturing figure brushing a young child's hair seen in Degas' work, and has also placed his scene at the beach, with the horizon stretching across the canvas. For the reasons discussed previously, Pete's beach scene is less busy than that of Degas, which features various activities. On the horizon, steamboats chug out black smoke, people paddle in the shallows and the wind catches sails. In the middle ground, a dog stands between a well-dressed couple. To the far left, children wrapped in white towels, a detail Pete also features in Beach Coma, follow a woman, either their mother or a nanny, who carries a baby. Paint is applied with large, confident brushstrokes, depicting vast expanses of beach, sea and sky. The style of beach scene falls into the Impressionist genre, an art movement that emerged in France around the 1860s. Although not a formal group, those associated with Impressionism, including Claude Monet, Paul Cézanne and Alfred Sisley, were revolutionary in both how they painted and what they chose to paint, causing a stir at the time and changing the way art was created thereafter. Many art historians recognise this movement as having paved the way for modern art. The techniques and methods of the Impressionists differed radically from work that came before, which typically was painted in studios and depicted traditional subjects, such as classical, historical and religious scenes, as well as portraiture. Such themes had dominated the art world for hundreds of years. The Impressionists broke away from this, specifically wanting to capture nature in ways that were unheard of at the time. Landscapes and outdoor scenes were typical of this group. Although landscapes had been painted before, the way the Impressionists chose to depict these scenes was radically different. These artists would often paint outdoors, en plein air, meaning that the artists would start and finish their entire work in the open. Their approach was spontaneous. For example, they dispensed with preliminary sketches, later worked on in a studio. As well as landscapes and natural scenes, they also wanted to make light itself the subject and would paint exceptionally fast to record what was in front of them before the light changed. This resulted in sketchy, wild brushstrokes that were highly colourful, an aesthetic that shocked the traditionalists of the day. Through their avant-garde application of paint and colour, the Impressionists fundamentally changed what could be depicted in art and how it could be depicted. Also controversial was the Impressionists' desire to paint contemporary everyday life, capturing people in the moment whilst going about their ordinary business. This immediacy was also inspired by the development of photography, which had emerged at the beginning of the 19th century, changing how people looked at the world. The portrayal of everyday scenes is another reason why Pete admires the Impressionist movement and its artists who, like Pete, chose to depict working-class people. These artists immersed themselves in working-class life, portraying people they knew and also those who made up their surroundings, observing them at leisure. Degas, born in 1834, was one of the central figures of the Impressionist movement, although he preferred the term realist. He also differed from his contemporaries in that he came from a wealthy family, his father a successful banker. Degas originally trained to work in the law. However, in 1855 he completely changed his vocation, enrolling at the École des Beaux-Arts, studying under Louis Lamotte, a former student of the French neoclassical painter Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. Degas' skill as an artist also developed through his intensive study of the old masters, spending time in Italy between 1854 and 1859, copying works in galleries. At the beginning of his artistic career, Degas focused on traditional historical, classical works as well as portraiture. However, this all changed when he met Edouard Manet, another important painter of the Impressionist movement. Once Manet had introduced Degas to other artists painting in this style, Degas deserted his traditional subjects and began painting contemporary scenes. He then went on to become one of the greatest painters of the Impressionist group. However, unlike his contemporaries, he was uninterested in painting landscapes and dappled light. Instead, ballerinas practicing in studios or dancing on stage at the Paris Opera were among his favourite subjects. He also painted circuses, theatres, racecourses and cafes. As well as using oil paints, he often sketched in pastel, achieving beautiful results. For example, in his work After the Bath Woman Drying Herself, part of London's National Gallery collection, along with Beach Scene, Degas captures various textures through his use of soft-coloured pastels. The way in which he has depicted the fabric the sitter uses, through subtle use of colour, gives shadow and weight to the cloth, which drapes over the back of the chair. The shadow of the woman's back is not only picked out by darker shades, but the artist has also used pink and orange, exemplifying Impressionism's intense and groundbreaking use of colour. This work also illustrates how the Impressionist subject matter was completely shocking and revolutionary at the time. Although nudes had constantly appeared in art long before this movement, the way in which they were painted differed greatly. For example, nudes might help to tell a religious story, such as Adam and Eve or Susanna and the Elders. The use of nudity was also justified as a way of telling classical stories, for example Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, which referenced ancient Greek and Roman statuary, providing a scholarly way to portray the naked body in art. This is not to say that nudity in art was always used to give edifying messages, as reclining and posed nudes were also extremely popular. Such works were often titillating, intended for the male gaze with the models posed in sumptuous surroundings. In fact, the Impressionists also painted reclining nudes. However, the difference in Degas' After the Bath Woman Drying Herself is the completely unglamorized use of the nude. In many ways, this work seems more voyeuristic than the previous images of nudes shown, because the model has been painted as if she doesn't know she is being watched. It would have also been shocking to see a nude in this ordinary context, as the sitter has not been contextualized by a traditional setting, draped over a chaise longue, perfected and idealized for her male spectators. Although After the Bath has arguably been painted for the male gaze, by painting this woman engaged in something so ordinary as drying herself after washing, the artist blurs the lines between being nude and simply being naked. Returning to Beach Scene, although this snapshot of public life appears natural and uncontrived, Degas completed this painting in his studio, working from pastel sketches. His method differed from common practices within the Impressionist group, as although he intended his work to appear as if it had been painted or sketched spontaneously, he didn't actually paint en plein air, stating, even when working from nature, one has to compose. Another interesting influence on Degas' work was his fascination with and admiration for Japanese woodblock prints, known as ukiyo-e, meaning pictures of a floating world. Around the 1850s, the import of such prints to Europe influenced many Western artists. In fact, the combing of the girl's hair in Beach Scene directly referenced Japanese woodblock prints, particularly the work of Ando Hiroshige, who often depicted women combing their hair. Beach Scene was painted around the time Degas began to suffer from an eye condition, which caused him great pain and necessitated repeated treatments. As mentioned, he worked in a studio, largely due to his traditional training. However, the studio also helped him adjust the light, which aided management of his eye condition, as bright light would agitate him. In the 1880s, when he started losing his sight, he began to work mainly with pastels, resulting in simpler and more colourful compositions. He also created wax models, manipulating the wax to mirror the little he could see. This became the main outlet for his artistic expression in the 1890s, as his eyesight deteriorated further. These wax figures were mainly models of nude women, women bathing, and horses. For the last 2 decades of his life, before his death in 1917, Degas was practically blind, living an almost reclusive existence. He remained a force to be reckoned with, and was known for his strong character and unrelenting dedication to his craft, traits which made him seem distant and cold. His genius garnered worldwide respect amongst other artists, and he was the first figure from the Impressionist group to be recognised as one of the finest artists of the 19th century. We hope you have enjoyed this art historical insight into both Pete McKee and Degas' work and the connection between the two. Don't forget to check out our next art history video, where we'll examine another McKee work and its influences that draw on the history of art. Many thanks for watching.